In the backdrop of the first anniversary of the Israel-Hamas war, one of the deadliest massacres of Jews since the Holocaust gave firepower to the ongoing tensions between Israel and the Palestinian terror group Hamas. The Israeli special forces are conducting small group raids into southern Lebanon to dismantle Hezbollah positions. This comes after Israeli airstrikes since September 23, 2024 caused deaths of 7 commanders and officials from the Hezbollah terror group, including its leader Hassan Nasrallah. In response to these armed movements by Israel, Iran launched 180 missiles into Israel on October 1, 2024. This escalated tensions in the Israel and Iran-backed militias Hezbollah-Hamas conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in his United Nations General Assembly speech, said Israel is changing the balance of power on its northern front as its military said it struck 1,600 Hezbollah assets. Now, tensions between Hezbollah and Israel had escalated on October 8, 2023, a day after the unprecedented attack on Israel by Hamas gunmen. This had triggered the war in the Gaza Strip. Hezbollah fired at Israeli positions in solidarity with the Palestinians. The group has since then launched over 8,000 rockets targeting northern Israel. The Israel-Hamas conflict, while the world was waking up to a hope of brighter future, October 7, 2023 was already eclipsed for the citizens of Israel. Hamas, the sole ruler of Gaza after violently ejecting political rivals in 2007, had begun conducting attacks, the targets being the key areas of the 1948 occupied territories by Israel to reject the country's right to exist. The Al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, stormed across Gaza's border into Israel, killing 1,200 people. This is known as the Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Hamas also fired thousands of rockets and is held accountable for the atrocities inflicted upon the lives of children, the elderly, and also 364 youngsters attending an Israeli electronic music festival in Israel. The acts of terror didn't stop there. Next, Hamas took 250 Israeli hostages into Gaza. The terror group said it had retaliated to Israeli crimes against the Palestinian people. These include security raids on Islam's third holiest site, the Al-Aqsa Mosque in occupied East Jerusalem. This heightened a sense of urgency and anger among Palestinian groups. Hamas saw this as an opportunity to assert its position and influence regional dynamics. Historically, the group has used high-profile attacks to demonstrate its capability and respond to perceived injustices. Hamas also demanded the freedom of Palestinian prisoners in Israel and to end the blockade of the Gaza Strip by Israel and Egypt. This was considered a security measure by Israel and Egypt. Operation Iron Swords. In response to the surprise infiltration into Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu launched Operation Iron Swords. The offensive was characterized by a series of airstrikes aimed at Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. In the aftermath of 7/10 attack, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his country's aim was the destruction of Hamas and the return of Israeli hostages. Casualties of Israel-Hamas war. The innocent lives ended facing the brunt of this Israel-Hamas conflict of interest, which dates back to the existence of Palestine. Under the Ottoman Empire, 1,200 people were killed and more than 250 were taken to Gaza as hostages, according to Israeli tallies. More than 33,000 Palestinians in Gaza had also been killed as a result of air and artillery strikes carried out by the Israeli military. Point of no return? Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech at UNGA took off with a plea for peace. He said, and I quote, "Israel seeks peace, Israel made peace and will make again. Enemies seek not only to destroy us and our civilization." Changing his tone to a stronger stance, the Israeli Prime Minister also told world leaders at the UN that Israel will continue degrading Hezbollah and enough is enough. He said his government would no longer tolerate daily rocket fired from Lebanon area. Israel has every right to remove this threat and return our citizens to their homes safely, and that's exactly what we're doing. What does the tensions between Israel, Iran-backed militant groups symbolize for India's ties with Israel and Iran? On the issue of burgeoning tensions between Israel and Hamas after the latter initiated attacks in 2023, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had said, and I quote, "Deeply shocked by the news of terrorist attacks in Israel. Our thoughts and prayers are with the innocent victims and their families. We stand in solidarity with Israel at this difficult hour." 5 days after the Hamas attacks, India's Ministry of External Affairs reiterated its stance in favor of direct talks and establishing a sovereign, independent, and viable state of Palestine living within secure and recognized borders side by side at peace with Israel. Meanwhile, given the currents of the present-day environment between Israel and Iran, the Ministry of External Affairs issued a statement saying, and I quote, "We are deeply concerned at the escalation of the security situation in West Asia and reiterate our call for restraint by all concerned and protection of civilians. It is important that the conflict doesn't take a wider regional dimension, and we urge that all issues be addressed through a dialogue and diplomacy." Recently, as Jaishankar said, India was concerned about the broadening of the conflict in West Asia, adding, and I quote, "Don't underestimate the importance of communication in difficult times," he said. India's stance is largely based on restraint and dialogue, given its friendly ties with both the nations. On the military front, India and Israel have jointly developed the medium to long-range surface-to-air missile system, that is the Barak 8. Meanwhile, ships of India's first training squadron have arrived at Iran for a long-range training deployment. International stance on the all-guns-blazing policy of Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Spanish Foreign Minister Jose Manuel Alvarez has urged thousands of Spanish civilians currently in Lebanon to leave the country and for Israel to stop its assault. Britain's Foreign Secretary David Lammy is calling for an immediate ceasefire in both Lebanon as well as Gaza. He also urged both Israel and Iran to show restraint and avoid a regional escalation. The story that's beginning to unfold. The latest front opened up after Israel's strategic pager blasts and airstrikes that killed thousands of Hezbollah operatives. Iran has always attacked Israel through Houthi rebels, Hezbollah and also Hamas, who chose to enter a state of war with Israel. Iran launched almost 200 ballistic missiles towards Israel, and this forced the nation's 10 million population into bomb shelters. Now, US's ironclad support for Iran could translate into Israel striking inside Iran, potentially against its nuclear facilities. Additional troops have also been deployed at border communities for both defensive and offensive scenarios, according to Israeli Defense Forces. This comes just before the first anniversary of the 7/11 attack. What does the ongoing Iran and Israel conflict signify for India? It's not an ideal situation for India, as this disrupts our supply chain and energy security. 1/3 of India's oil comes from this region. The sooner the war ends, the better it is for India.